There was a very interesting article published in the Independent, a newspaper published in the UK during the last few days. So the article starts with this. There is an insidious view going the rounds in Washington that says it won't make much difference to U.S. foreign policy what new president takes office the next year. The basic building blocks of security interests, commitments of troops in Iraq, pro-Israeli policies in the Middle East, and the projection of American military power around the globe will all remain. Well, I'm an avid reader of the Independent, and I can probably interject my own comment here by saying that this is not just the view of the insidious Washington elite. In fact, the people over here in America, most of us, have probably become a little bit more informed about the opinions of the elite, which is to say that we are aware of them and we do not agree with them, and we're vehemently against it. So whatever goes on in Washington is not necessarily agreed upon by the American populace. So the article goes on to say, well, it's utter hogwash, saying that there is no difference in policies. Anybody taken in by this nonsense should read the two major speeches by President Bush on his Middle East peace tour over the past week. The first was his address to the Israeli Knesset on the occasion of the state's 60th anniversary. And the second was the speech at the World Economics Forum in Egypt on last Sunday. The two were clearly intended as bookmarks for a visit planned to establish Bush's legacy as a would-be peacemaker. Indeed, the U.S. president even used the same terms in each of the two speeches, that the democratic system is the only fair and just ordering of society and the only way to guarantee the God-given rights of all people, that the U.S. is the purveyor and guarantor of freedom around the world, and that freedom means free markets and competition. Now, aside from this article in the Independent, they do get a few things right, namely to compare those two speeches. The real importance of those speeches is not what they said, but what they didn't say. An American president with probably more influence than any American leader since Israel's inception, with probably more influence than anyone else because of his total commitment to their cause, arrives in the country supposedly to pursue a peace plan while the rockets are flying, and in his most important public address does not mention the peace and does not even ask the Israeli government to make a single concession to further it. Not a reference or a request or hint in the entire address, just a praise for a country which has forged a free and modern society on the love of liberty, a passion for justice, and a respect for human dignity. I wonder what the Palestinians would have to say about that, or anyone else in the Middle East for that matter. The extreme right and orthodox religious parties were, of course, delighted. Liberal members of the Knesset who had hoped for some gesture of pressure by the U.S. president on their prime minister to offer some concessions to the Palestinians, if only to stop the expansion of the settlements alone, were aghast. So when some of us are speaking out against Bush and the Israeli government, we're not speaking out against people in that country, against Israelis in general. We're not anti-Semitic. We are just looking out for ordinary people, and that's why we keep speaking out, because this is about pure force and dominance in the region. And unfortunately, you know, when people take such a stance, it usually backfires. Compare that to Bush's speech to the Arabs in Egypt 3 days later. It is a long list of demands. They must, he lectured, institute economic reform if they are to take their place in the center of progress. Economic reform must be accompanied by political reform. Property rights must be protected and risk-taking encouraged. Primary schools must teach basic skills such as reading and math rather than indoctrinating children with ideologies of hatred. Meanwhile, this is a president who is speaking in Egypt, which is one of the most repressive regimes in the Arab Peninsula. And he is welcomed by Mubarak during the speech, and he makes no reference to the political repression, to the outsourcing of our prisoners from Guantanamo to Egypt, which he, I suppose, is viewing as falling under property rights of some kind. Well, things go on, and so back in Washington, John McCain was quick to follow up on Bush's speech by demanding that Obama declare his intentions on talking to Iran and to Hamas. And that may prove the tenor of the Republican attacks on the Democrats in the coming months. This is what the Independent newspaper is saying. But outside the narrow confines of Washington, no American should be in doubt. The world is desperate for change, not only of tone, but of course. From the U.S. of George Bush. Nothing short of a revolution will do. This is coming from the Independent in London. Thanks.